everyone, welcome back to I Married a Film Snob, where we review films of today and yesteryear. In this video, we're going to review an all-time classic, Eyes Wide Shut, directed by Stanley Kubrick, starring Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman. Make sure to watch until the end to see our rating.
Here we go, let's go! Stanley Kubrick's swan song and final masterpiece breaks down and fearlessly confronts the unspoken confessions of a marriage and the mental side of marital fidelity. Casting Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman, a real-life married couple at the time, is not only a brave and even obvious choice based on their talent and star power, but it delves deeper into the Kubrick's obsession of getting the most out of all his performances and digging deep into the psyche of his characters. Like many of Kubrick's films, it confused and divided critics upon its initial release, and only later, with time, has it been properly recognized for the masterpiece it is.
Eyes Wide Shut is about an upscale, good-looking couple, Bill and Alice Hartford, that seem to have it all, as they ride the fringe of an upper-class New York society. Their comfortable and privileged world is put into question when Alice confronts Bill about male and female dynamics, and then ultimately confesses her secret longing for another man. Although the confession is about a thought of infidelity and not an actual act committed, it demolishes Bill's comfort and surety in the world they have built together, and makes him question everything, not only their marriage, but himself.
Cinematography-wise, Kubrick controls scenes with elegant and subtle camera work. The lighting shifts between heightened hues of blues and red, to scenes that almost feel melodramatic in their soft focus with overblown backgrounds that cast a distinctive haze over the characters.
As Alice is dancing with the older gentleman, white points of a Christmas decoration are overblown, with a glow effect placing Alice in front of the star. It's almost like a halo effect, maybe implying her moral resolve to not act on the temptation.
Yeah, the party that's very subtly insinuated with the way it's shot and the lighting and everything. The soft focus emanating from all the little points of light in the background that, again, are overblown, maybe an f-stop or two to really pick up that light coming through. As usual, Kubrick uses gliding Steadicam shots to great effect, but he also blocks scenes with controlled static shots that show his mastery at composition using simple yet effective medium and close-up shots.
As an example, during Alice's confession, she's crouched on the floor, while Bill is sitting on the bed, perfectly displaying how they literally are on different planes during their argument.
As is expected with Kubrick, nothing is superfluous. Every frame, every composition is meticulously crafted, and each frame becomes a capsule, telling a small story within the larger arc of the film.
As an example, the calculated composition of Ziegler standing over Bill as Bill is trying to treat the semi-conscious girl implies that Ziegler is ultimately still in control of the situation, and he has the upper hand.
The pacing of the film is restrained and scenes build upon one another until certain storylines peak, and then the flow ebbs into slower scenes, before they then crescendo again. This is largely accomplished by the editing of the film, which takes its time, and always allows the actors to explore scenes fully, never rushing line deliveries or moments of reflection.
The line delivery is sometimes almost too measured and paced, and even dangerously tiptoes the line of being too melodramatic with the long pauses and breaks, but Kubrick knows when to pull back just in time to still make them feel organic and natural in the frame of the conversations.
But I could hardly move.
Yes, sometimes characters deliver their lines with a pause, and you're left to wonder, and he does this throughout the time, but he never drags it out too much.
Yeah.
He gets really close sometimes, and it becomes almost a little frustrating, but it fits the characters and the situation the characters are speaking, so it doesn't feel out of place.
Ever, yeah.
Did you, by any chance, happen to them?
There are 3 scenes placed precisely within the structure of the film. At the first act, the halfway point, and then the final acts that are worth diving into.
First, and most importantly, is the scene in the bedroom when Alice admits to Bill her thoughts of infidelity while they were on vacation one time. Being spurred on by the previous night's party, and how Bill seemed to disappear with 2 models, and also by smoking a joint that opens up some repressed emotions, Alice sticks an emotional knife into Bill by admitting she was willing to risk everything, her marriage, her role as a mother, everything, to spend even one night with a random stranger that caught her eye.
In this moment, Bill's world comes crashing down, and his entire conception of their marriage and who his wife is dismantled in a moment. A lesser filmmaker would not make us so emotionally engaged with these characters and their petty thought crimes. but Kubrick knows how to make them very relatable in spite of their cloak of upper-class privilege.
Yeah, we somehow still feel, I mean, these guys have the perfect life, they have money, they live in Central Park West, they upper class, but usually we're like, oh, who cares? But he does make it believable and relatable, and even anyone can relate to that moment of just total defeat.
Yeah.
Now in this bedroom scene, Kubrick does not move the camera much, but instead focuses on the strong performances, with Kidman dominating the scene and Cruise's sometimes dialogue-less reactions showing his state of utter devastation. This scene is what the whole movie is about. A couple who thought they had each other figured out, but then the admission of a thought comes pouring out, casting doubt into the whole foundation of their marriage.
I especially loved the writing and direction of this scene. The writing reminds me of a darker Woody Allen in its social commentary on men and women and their social roles, of how men and women think, their differences, and double standards.
Yeah. It's a great scene, just two actors going at it. Simple medium close-ups, simple mid-range close-ups, and that's it. Now here lies the deeper subtext of the movie. We may fall in love with someone and marry them and build a life together, but the other person's deepest thoughts, no matter how unpleasant and unflattering they may be, are always out of reach. But when ultimately exposed, can shatter our perception of the other person.
Now defeated by this admission, Bill spends the rest of the film not only replaying his wife's adulterous thoughts, but also trying to get a revenge of sorts by trying to have an affair with someone, anyone, as a way to reaffirm himself and rebuild his fractured ego. Now
what follows is a slew of near misses into infidelity that never actually culminate. Now partly this is because Bill is repeatedly portrayed to be a good guy, a man who's thrown into a dark world he's not prepared to face. Yet the catalysts of his wife's admission have forced him to explore unfamiliar worlds of prostitution, orgies, and potential murder, and he becomes a navigator of sorts into uncharted waters of sexual deceit.
Now simultaneously being a good guy may be what ultimately saves him from his total downfall, as his kindness and sincerity with the hooker, who almost overdoses in the bathroom, circle back to spare him from an uncertain fate. There are several signs that the universe attempts to get Bill back on his righteous path, once he decides to stray. Now the first sign is when Alice calls Bill just as he's about to have sex with a streetwalker. This momentarily snaps Bill back to himself and his moral code, and he decides to leave the girl, who coincidentally happens to have a red door as the entrance to her building. A little nod to red light districts and their association with prostitution.
Yeah, right as he's about to start, cell phone rings, and
it's Alice.
Hey, when are you coming home? And kind of ends the night for him there at that point.
Now the second sign being a masked nude woman who is later confirmed to be Mandy, telling him he shouldn't be here at the orgy.
Yeah, she keeps warning him and warning him. It's like, get out of here, this is not you. But we'll go into that more later.
Yeah. And then when Bill calls Marion, the daughter of the deceased patient, and the boyfriend picks up, Bill's forced to hang up.
Yeah, even though he dismissed her initially as kind of being crazy when she confesses his love for him, at one point, he's so desperate to try to just
get anything
that he calls her up. And with his bad luck, of course, the boyfriend picks up and he just gives up. He just hangs up and realizes it's not meant to be. So.
And lastly, the roommate of the hooker admits to Bill that the girl he almost had sex with just the night before is in fact HIV positive.
Yeah, he in fact goes back to try to get with the hooker again and brings her, I don't know, some pastries or something.
Or flour. Yeah, I don't know.
And the roommate appears at the door instead of her, and even as they're about to get going, then she has to stop him and be like, hey, by the way, I should warn you, my roommate, the girl you were with, turns out she's HIV positive. And again, that
just reconfirms that
it's like these near misses, near dodges that it wasn't meant to be, and it'll never be meant to be for him.
Exactly.
Moving on through Bill's crazy night, there's a point where he has to go to a costume shop to try to, at the last minute, get a costume for this wild party he has to go to. Now in that scene, he gets his first little glimpse of the dark sexuality that's out there, possibly even an omen of what's to come, and what kind of depravity is out there. The shopkeeper's daughter is entangled in a room with two Asian men, and we don't really know what's going on, but there is something going on, and the dad first gets angry and upset, but then he kind of just lets it slide.
As he's returning the costume, the Asian men are still there, leaving.
Yeah.
Which shows...
But then he says, should the good doctor need anything, and I mean anything, don't be afraid to ask or something. It's like he's willing to give up his daughter, presumably for an arrangement, which is what he says. So
now throughout the film, Bill's tempted several times. He gets hit on by the two models at the party, Marion, who's the daughter of the deceased patient, who confesses her love for him, a streetwalker luring him into a seedy apartment, the teenage daughter of the costume shop owner, and lastly, the desk clerk at his friend's hotel.
Yeah, even the desk clerk gives him signs and things of, everyone's kind of after him, but
Right.
It never leads to anything. It's just always just the intention, and that's it. Mm-hmm. And now this leads us to the scene that defines the second act. The infamous orgy scene in the middle of the movie, the second big moment of the film after the bedroom confession. Now, thanks to randomly running into an old friend, Bill is tempted to attend a wild and secretive orgy in the middle of a reclusive mansion where everyone is masked and all forms of debauchery are about to go down. Mm-hmm. He manages to extract the password from his friend to be able to enter and witness a dark world of sexual depravity.
Now you'll notice when his friend plants the seed of curiosity, he's lit from underneath, as if in a sinister light. After being told about a wild party, now Bill is also lit in that same sinister light, as if the corruption has begun, and he's ultimately touched by devilish desires.
As usual, Kubrick uses lighting to accentuate little moments and heighten them, and subliminally, sometimes you notice and sometimes you don't, but they're always there present, augmenting a scene even further with the cinematography. Now, the orgy scene is simultaneously gorgeous and sexually charged. The main room, with its Moorish architecture, implies a harem for the cult gathering. And the music only adds layers of eroticism, mixing the nudity and different forms of sexual encounters Bill witnesses.
The song Migrations by Jocelyn Pook is played as we follow Bill roaming in the different sex rooms of the mansion, further implying that Bill is in foreign territory. We, like Bill in this scene, are observers, witnessing a world of lust that titillates us while also making us question the moral depravity of what's happening.
Yeah, you're split. It's like, this is kind of sexy, but it's also very weird and it's kind of messed up at the same time. So
yeah.
It tiptoes that line very well. Now, what is important in this scene is that even though Bill is masked, like everyone else, he immediately stands out. And it's not only because he arrives in a cab. I know they use that as an explanation later on in the movie. But in a way, his aura does not belong in that place with those people. Mm-mm. And he's quickly recognized and sniffed out as an intruder, not privy to the world.
Immediately as he enters, you'll see these two masked figures up on the balcony that turn.
And notice him immediately.
Yeah, they acknowledge him and they nod and he nods back.
Yeah, and then it comes back to plays that the Zieglers or who is, but immediately he's recognized. He's immediately out of place, and even before they can check that he's in a cab, they can check the receipt of the costume shop with his name. He's already been found out.
Yeah. Just as importantly as the setup to the orgy scene is the scene that follows immediately when Bill is confronted by Red Cloak and many of the masked attendees, and he's circled in and forced to admit he's an outsider. Faced with a sea of nightmarish Venetian masks, the confrontation itself is a waking nightmare.
Yeah, that scene is pretty intense.
Yeah.
Speaking of tense, the tension in this scene is unreal. And the piano score adds an additional level of strain that is perfectly crafted. I mean, that ding, 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 it's just building.
Perfectly, yeah.
And it is in this moment that we fully grasp how out of depth and realm Bill is. What he had hoped would be a fun diversion quickly turns into a dangerous situation. And when the mass leader says, "Remove your clothes, or would you like us to do it for you?"
Yeah.
You just tense up. You feel for Bill at the moment. You just cringe in disbelief at what dark corners could await him. And you're just like, oh my God, this is...
Is he going to do it?
Yeah, is he going to be for it? Like, how's he going to get out of this?
Right.
Yeah.
Remove your clothes. Or would you like us to do it for you?
Once again, a thought, not a real action, has driven him to be cornered into certain demise. Yet he is miraculously saved by a mystery woman, one of the sex workers, who is willing to sacrifice herself in his name. This scene further shows Bill's naivety to the ugly truths of the world, and the realities he never had to confront before in his life. Now in the rest of the film, Bill struggles to cope with the ramifications of his actions, ultimately finding out the woman who saved him has potentially been killed, and his inquiries into the whole thing have him being followed by mysterious forces.
Yeah, once that night happens, everything just starts to...
Like a domino effect.
Yeah, go from bad to worse.
Exactly.
Now, Bill's self-struggle and doubt culminate in a meeting with Ziegler, played by Sidney Pollack, a director himself, who asks him to meet to discuss everything. Now, this scene is a masterclass in dialogue delivery, acting subtleties, and well-crafted blocking. During the whole scene, you, as a viewer, are tasked to decipher what is truth, what is lie. Is what Ziegler is saying a way to appease Hartford? Is he covering up for his other elite orgy people? And most importantly, is the death of the sex worker just a coincidence bound to happen because of her drug tendencies?
I don't think so. Yeah, I didn't know Sidney Pollack was a director.
Yeah.
That's pretty awesome because the way he delivers those lines is so perfect.
Apparently they did that scene for 2 weeks because Kubrick just wasn't happy. He did take after take, as he was known to do.
He
Take
is
after take after
a
take.
perfectionist for sure.
And I mean that the way the scene is played and Sidney Pollack plays the scene, it's very because is he full of is he BSing? Is he real?
Right.
Is he being genuine? Is he trying to save his friend because his friend saved him at one point? It's
so
all
good.
very made in a very thin line to you have to.
It's ambiguous.
Yeah. So now at the end of the scene, we get a final confirmation that the woman Hartford saved from overdosing in the beginning of the film is indeed the woman who claimed to sacrifice herself instead of him. And she's also the one in the morgue. Then Bill goes and reads in the newspaper that an ex-beauty queen has overdosed in a hotel. And again, that's the first clue. Is it real? Is it a coincidence? Was it she made to look like she killed herself? And
of course.
But we do at least get the confirmation that it is the same woman throughout the whole thing.
Lastly, in this scene, having a red billiard table is clearly a deliberate choice by a minutia-obsessive Kubrick, who probably wanted to accentuate that the rules of this game are different.
And more menacing.
Yeah. And ultimately, confessing to his wife Alice, it's the only way Bill can cope with the guilt, and he likewise has an emotional release of repressed emotions.
Yeah, when he comes home and finds the mask on his side of the bed, he finally says, "That's it. I'll tell you everything. I'll tell you everything." He starts to break down crying. Now, the mastery of the film and Kubrick's storytelling lies in questioning one simple thing. Is a thought of infidelity equally as damaging as an actual act of infidelity? Now, Bill tries to have an affair, but circumstances prevent him. But you realize he would have never considered that had it not been for his wife's confession of thinking about cheating on him. Now, Kubrick explores the unspoken dynamics of marriage and the fragile thoughts and selfish acts that can cause the whole edifice to come crumbling down.
And this makes you wonder, do we choose to live with these transgressions and keep them bottled up, or learn to cope with our flaws for the sake of a return to normalcy?
Yeah, at the end, I think Bill wants his life back. And this mind screwing he got has thrown him totally out of his element, and he just wants back his life, this upper privileged life. That's all he wants. His wife, his kid, his security,
peace.
Yeah. And that gets thrown into the loop when just the thought of what his wife was thinking changes his whole view.
Completely from then on.
Now, I'd have to say, this is up there as one of Kubrick's best. And that's saying a lot, because sometimes the mystique of Kubrick can make it hard to judge his work. Yet Kubrick, to me, is a master of cinema and one of the greatest directors of all time. And that's what made Kubrick a master, because he could tackle any genre, from comedy,
like Dr. Strangelove,
to sci-fi,
2001 and A Clockwork Orange,
to war epics,
Full Metal Jacket and Paths of Glory,
to period and costume dramas,
Barry Lyndon and Spartacus,
to horror,
like The Shining, of course,
to layered dramas of human psychology,
Lolita and Eyes Wide Shut.
He, with his skill, he could weave and craft a multitude of layers into these defined constructs that make them stand apart. He never cornered himself into a niche and was able to elevate the medium to its highest forms.
And mastered each one.
Yeah. He did every genre, whether it was horror, he did them all flawlessly.
Yeah, each one.
But still make them his own. He didn't go into the tropes of the usual thing. If it was horror, it was more, each time what stood him apart was they were more psychological. Yes, there were war films, period, but they were more about the characters and the psychology. He was a very deep analytical filmmaker, and you could tell that from his movies. Now with this, his final film, we get to see a master storyteller wield his prowess one last time. And the result is just as affecting, if not more so, because of cramming his mastery of visual language into what almost seems to be a chamber drama. Now the visual flourishes are still there that he's known for, but they're more restrained, showing an older filmmaker comfortable enough in his craft that he doesn't have to show off.
And lastly, the acting, as in most of his films, is superb, and we are emotionally and psychologically engaged throughout the entire film. And that is the ultimate sign of a great filmmaker. to have us read his film as it unfolds before our very eyes. And this leads us to our ratings of the film. So what would you give it?
This is a tough one because it's almost a 10, but I'm gonna have to give it a solid 9.5. Mainly because there are those scenes where the pacing of the line delivery irk me a little, but I know they're deliberate, they're well done, but it's just that little thing because the rest of the film is pretty perfect as usual with Kubrick, so
Yeah.
9.5.
And on that, I would give it a 10 out of 10.
Wow. All right.
Yeah,
Our first 10.
It
All right.
is, to me, it's perfect in every way. The acting, the cinematography, the writing, the directing. I mean, it's pretty.
Design.
The production design, the soundtrack, the score, it's pretty flawless. So.
And you know, relating to that, a little trivia: in their infinite wisdom, the Academy Awards gave the film exactly 0 nominations.
No.
And even a lot of the critics, when it came out in '99, they didn't go too kindly on it, and they said, you know, it was kind of mixed. But now people look back on it and realize this is a powerful film with great acting and a powerful story about just a couple and how fragile everything can come falling apart. So.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss more Film Snob reviews.